So I would like to welcome you all this afternoon to the final session where the manifesto will be presented to you in some form. I don't really expect you all to read a huge document while you're sitting here with us. But most importantly, we will have a conversation partly amongst the panel, but also, let me just step to the side so you can see them, also with you, with all of you, okay? We have an hour together. Let's use that time really well. It's our last hour. Let's make the most of it. To begin with, let me introduce to you 4 people on the stage. We have Teresa, Patrick, Gorica, and Natasha. And I would like to ask them to just perhaps introduce yourselves to our audience. Okay. Teresa, would you like to start?
Yes. So I'm the representative on freedom of the media of the OSCE. Let me, one minute just to explain what do I do, otherwise it would look a little bit strange. So what is my role? The OSCE is a security organization. They have an institution that is completely autonomous, independent, that deals with media freedom and freedom of expression. And what shall I do is to look at, we have a wide membership in our organization, 57 participating states from Vancouver to Vladivostok, so it's a big part of the world. And what I shall do is to look at the participating states and be sure that the participating states are aligned regarding their practices, their frameworks, legal frameworks, with the principles and commitments they adhere to. This is one dimension. The second dimension, this is in a nutshell, is to provide assistance to the participating states and say you are not doing what you should do, but we are here to help you. This is what I do.
Thank you, Teresa. Obrigada. Patrick.
Well, I'm Patrick Penninckx. I'm the head of the Information Society Department of the Council of Europe. Council of Europe covers now 46 states in Europe. One of them has left us, which is the Russian Federation after the invasion of Ukraine. And since then, we're no longer a pan-European organization, but we still cover a bulk of the countries that are covered by the OSCE. We also have a cooperation with countries like the United States, Canada, Japan, but also Japan, I already mentioned that. So quite a number of countries which are observers to the Council of Europe, and a number of them we cooperate with in the framework of specific conventions. Now, the Council of Europe is very often named the human rights watchdog of the Council of Europe, of the countries of the Council of Europe, and primarily focusing on human rights, rule of law, and democracy. And within that, I have a specific role, and that role is to deal with media freedom, freedom of expression, protection of journalists, but also cooperate with the states on those issues, and secondly, deal with data protection, cybercrime, artificial intelligence, and the cooperation with business partners in the digital field. So, as you can see, this covers quite a number of the elements that you have been debating yesterday and today, and I hope to be able to respond to some of your questions.
Thank you. Gorica.
Hello, hi. I'm Gorica Atanasova Gjorevska. I'm a diplomat from North Macedonia, a small country in the Western Balkans that is posted to the permanent mission of my country to Vienna, to the international organizations, particularly the OSCE, the United Nations, and some other international organizations. Why am I here? Well, because this small country from the Western Balkans, North Macedonia, will be chairing the Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe. So as Madame Ribeiro said, the largest regional European security organization next year, so in 2023. And this year, so I represent a participating state in the OSCE, one of the 57, which will take on the helmet of the organization, which is finding itself in a very complex geopolitical environment, as you know, at the moment, and which will try to put on the forefront some of the topics and some of the very relevant topics that you've discussed and inspired us all these past 2 days. So upon the invitation of your permanent representative, the Maltese permanent representative, Ambassador Dodi, I was invited here to gather ideas, basically, because youth will be one of the priority areas for us as a country that we'll put forward in our program for next year. And we will bring in youth to discuss topics through the different dimensions of the comprehensive concept of security in which the sui generis organization OSCE operates. So these are 3 dimensions, and one of the 3 is the human dimension. And so we hope that we can hear more of youth voices through this. Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome. Natasha.
Thank you, Janette. So I'm Natasha Meli Dode. I'm the ambassador of Malta to Austria, but also the permanent representative to the OSCE. And as Alex enjoys referring to me, I'm the culprit behind all this, which is partly true. As you've heard from the permanent secretary, who is my direct boss this morning, Malta decided to put media freedoms on as part of its foreign policy strategy, and that was one of the objectives. And of course, it fell upon me to work on this because, as Teresa said, media freedoms is one of the issues we work on at the OSCE in Vienna. But I pushed a lot to specifically choose disinformation for many reasons. Of course, the OSCE and the RFOM was concentrating on disinformation the past year or the past years. But I'm an ambassador, I'm also a mother of a teenager and a pre-teenie, and unlike Susan earlier, I decided to let them have TikTok, Be Real, whatever, Instagram. I myself am a very humble user of social media. But there was a point when I was very scared about my children, that they were being total victims of disinformation. And then I said, hey, maybe they are more resilient than I am and than we are, in the same way that whenever I have an update on my iPhone, I don't know how to use it, and for them, it becomes second nature. And so in all the brainstorming that we were doing, we decided to focus on youth, because we think that youth have a lot to teach us, honestly. And that's why we organized this conference in the way we organized it. Because we did not just to tick the box and to have any other conference. We could have done this conference in any other way. But we wanted the youth to have the voice. We're giving you the voice. My initial idea was for us to sit down there and for you to sit up here, but camera-wise, that was not possible, unfortunately. But I myself am no expert, but you have here institution representatives who are working on these issues. We represent governments with Gorica. So, and I think this will also link into one of the questions I saw from the manifesto. This is not just a conference. And as the permanent secretary said this morning, this is a process that will continue. So we are involving you, and please come forward and continue this process, because we're not just here paying lip service. We're really interested in what you have to say. And one last point is, for us, it was very important to have a wide representation. So that's why we try to link in the Mediterranean partners of the OSCE, so our southern neighbors. But I'm so happy to have a Brazilian with us and someone from Ghana, and maybe I missed some nationalities as well, through the MEDEC students. So as far as I'm concerned, I'm going to say thank you very much for being here. It's been stressful organizing this conference, but it's been worth it, every single minute of it.
Thank you. Okay, let's crack on, shall we? So just to say, just to introduce all of these people, I know you've been meeting them over the course of the 2 days. All of these people have contributed to a manifesto. I'll give you some idea of how many ideas we've had in. There's a nice load of ideas there that have come in. The people have hung them on the washing line. And we also have pages of signatories of people saying, we want something, we need something, okay? Let me show you a video of some of the things that have been pointed out to me or highlighted to me or that jumped out for me about, in particular, the disinformation theme that we've had. Can you play the video, please? Thank you. So through a few workshops, a bit of brainstorming, speaking to people, we've come up with a manifesto that I'm just going to very quickly highlight a couple of, just draw out a couple of points, and then you're not going to hear from me. I'm going to hand it over. Great, okay. So it's as you know, it's organised around the themes of the conference. So on media freedoms, I think the real standout thing that people kept putting their comments under was that we all acknowledge the importance of media in our daily lives, and we don't take it for granted. I'll just leave that up for a second so that people can have a quick scan through some of the other things that have come up. And then actions, what actions to take. Oh, so many ideas, which is wonderful. The regulation of news media should be light touch, self-regulating where appropriate, and not inhibit journalism freedom. That was a theme that kept coming up and up again. I'll give you a moment to look at some of those. Less talk, more action. Something my kids also say to me. This was a nice idea. Somebody said, let's rank social media apps. So they give them a ranking, a trust ranking. Okay, combating disinformation. One of the standout things that kept coming up was the concern, just general concern about the lack of media and digital literacy skills across all age groups, and may I say, across many, many countries, except perhaps Sweden can stand itself out, I don't know. They used to be able to. And what do we do about it? Well, we should offer digital media literacy, more of it. That was a big standout for how to combat disinformation. But also around the algorithm should show us what we want to see and need to see and should see, and not what we shouldn't see. The algorithm, it just kept coming up, didn't it? Mm-hmm. Online behaviour, lots to talk about there, obviously. In particular, that the amount of online harms, and that online harms are not virtual harms. They are real harms. They affect people's daily lives. Action around that. As I said earlier, one person said no idea, and I actually really welcome that, because it's a reflection of how complicated it is. There you go, online hate and harassment is real hate and harassment. This came up as a big one, that we want to see the gender gap closed in computer science, in terms of how things are built and made and products are designed so that they serve all members of society. There's another few more actions there. Accountability. Yeah, so here's that algorithm. So I don't know how many years I've been going to conferences and talking about this, but it keeps coming up and up and up that the algorithms need to be more transparent and people need to feel they have more control over them. I would like to make a special thanks to Noah and his presentation today, because the scales dropped off my eyes and I felt, okay, I have some empowerment here. And as somebody who's taught media and digital literacy for years, I'm now going to bring that into my teaching. Thank you very much, Noah. Okay, and then there were lots of things other. One thing that kept coming up was move faster. This space is moving so fast. The next TikTok is just around the corner. We need to move faster. And with that, let's move on. Let's move faster. I'm going to ask Emanuela to ask the first question. Do you have a hand mic there, Emanuela? Thank you. Because it fits into the first of the themes, which is media freedoms. Emanuela.
Right. Thank you. Hello, everybody. So it's a question I've asked over and over because I feel it relates so personally to me as a diplomat and as a lawyer. A part of me is for the government, a part of me is for the people. So how can we achieve a balance between media democracy and freedom of the press and government censorship and the relevance of government censorship? How and when do we need the government to play a role in combating disinformation? And when do we draw the lines that the government is overlapping its boundaries and breaching our human rights? How do we achieve and arrive at a journalist who is the true watchdog of the politician and not a false inciter? Is it ever possible?
Teresa, could I ask you to come in on that first? Thanks.
You wish, yes. So thank you. It's a difficult question, and we could stay here for 2 days also, really to bring the right answers to this very complicated question. And I'll try to be very brief and try to be clear too. First of all, yes, media freedom is absolutely essential if you want to have functioning democracy. And to your first question, what should the governments do? And they have a lot of responsibility. They are the ones that have a positive obligation to protect human rights. So this is very important, and we have to say it very clearly. So they are the first actors to play a role in protecting media freedom in all its dimensions, in all its forms. So this is really key through legislation, through the implementation of legislation, through the institutions, but really it's a legal framework, and then there is all the institutions that should go together in order to ensure that media freedom is a reality. This is very important. At the same time, another actor which is very important is, of course, the journalists. And if we want really to also to have good journalism, the journalists, they have to take power. They have to be sure that they really respect high professional standards, that they are really prepared to do reporting. And we have heard just before lunch how bad reporting can be harmful for society in general, or for a group, a specific group in society. So this is clear. So we have many actors with different responsibilities. But the first positive obligation to protect media freedom is definitely in the hands of the state. The journalists, it's very important. They have to, through self-regulation, to respect rules and really be good journalists, do ensure good reporting. What is our role as consumers? We also have a role, and to be demanding, and to also searching for reliable information, to try not to just to swallow everything that is offered to us. So it always implies from us certain training, certain preparation to know exactly what do you want to do with the information. And then we have the intermediaries, the companies, and the companies also play an important role. We have talked a lot about algorithms, how important are the algorithms, etc. But I think that maybe, and Noah is there, and maybe it can jump into this discussion too. But I think, of course, it's very important, but it's not only a question of transparency of algorithms. And this is very important. Maybe what we need is to build from scratch the solutions, integrating multidisciplinary teams and philosophers who said, oh, I cannot have 3 or 4 philosophers. Maybe you have 2. And people that from social sciences, because otherwise we will have something that will be corrected in a moment that maybe it will be too late, and you will try to adapt or to put some power to, in a way, give a flavor of human rights. It's not enough. It's really from the scratch that you need to have multidisciplinary teams to look how can we find the best solutions for algorithms. And then, of course, we have other things like media literacy. It's very important. And media literacy, not only looking at the way we are consumers, we look at the flow of information, but also media literacy from the point of view that all of us, when using social media, we are also producers of content. So, you know, there are so many things to do.
Can I step in there? Because I'd like to ask, Amin from Egypt to ask a question, because it's actually dovetails nicely into where you've just got to. Please.
I'll stay here so everyone can see me.
Great.
Okay, so the question is, since I'm working as operations manager in the influencer marketing field, so I usually work with influencers and celebrities and everything like that. So what can we do to make people know how to trust people on social media, like the influencers, for example, like the content creators? Like, how can we trust them? Maybe the... I have actually 2 questions, but let's take the first question first, which is how can we make people, like how to help people know how to trust these people? I don't know. I want to know your answer.
Yes, I can react to it. And actually, Teresa gave already a broad picture and could have answered all your questions. But I have, if I want to come back to what Emanuela said first and then come to yours, because there is an underlying question. And since we are from very diverse countries and contexts, the first question that we need to answer, and that you need to answer, not the oldies sitting here, but that you need to answer, that is, what kind of society do you want to live in? Mm-hmm. What kind of society, based on what kind of values, do you want to transmit? That's the basic. Because this is currently the debate. This is the debate in the elections in Brazil. It is the debate in the elections in the United States. It's the debate in every election in Europe right now. So what society, what values do you want your society to be built upon? Because if you come from Ghana or Egypt or Brazil or Malta and other European Union and Council of Europe countries and Palestine and name the countries that are here, that is, what value system do you want to go for? Mm-hmm. Thank you so much. But and then comes the next question. Then comes the next question. Is freedom of expression one of those values that you want to build upon? Or do we say, or do we want to pay lip service to those values? Do we want to say, well, yeah, freedom of expression, cornerstone of our democratic societies, but ultimately, are our decision makers going to want to go for that or not? That is the question. And then we can come to, how are we then going to regulate that freedom of expression? What is the thin line that you want to walk between freedom of expression and then control? And how are we going to control the hate and the conspiracy and whatever online? And then comes, how do we regulate? How do we co-regulate? How do we self-regulate that? What do we as actors in civil society, as all of us media actors, because you say, how do we trust social media? I am a writer, I am a publisher, and I can distribute and I'm an information broadcaster because I have this in my pocket. So then the question is, How do we want to go about that, namely, when it then comes down to all of the broadcasters and media actors, which have become multiple, right? How do we go about making sure that they follow some ethical and quality guidelines? Because that's the disadvantage that we have created with the abundance of social media. And the abundance of social media has permitted a number of influencers, as you call them. Many of them are not influencers, and many have no basis, a value basis. So I would be hesitant to say this is only for the media platforms or to control this. That is in itself a limitation. We need a multitude of actors that can be present there. I'll leave it there for the moment.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, but at the same time, I feel like the influencers and content creators, they usually influence people. Like they have a huge influence on all of everyone here. Mm-hmm. So at the same time, I know some people, they don't follow the regulations that we have. And I think maybe Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, they have to put regulations. Maybe when they reach a number of followers, they have to sign a regulation form that they have not to make sure that everything they say, it's a right information, not just a fake information. So I don't know,
and maybe right. I can put that question in the context of the framework that you talked through is really helpful, but you've also heard, let's talk more action. And while we're talking, there are online harms going on, people are getting trolled. What do we do? What measures can we take?
Absolutely, and that's why as young people in the first place, you also have to know what already exists. Because sometimes it is very easy to say, well, oh, the decision makers are not taking decisions or we're not going fast enough. But have we looked into, and I was going to ask that question yesterday already, have we looked into what already exists? Anyone knows, I live in France, how many journalists Agence France Presse has? No? Agence France Presse has 1,200 journalists. They have 135 journalists which are paid by a social media platform to fact-check. So please do not think there's nothing happening because we don't know about it. Check your information. First, fact-check yourselves because there the disinformation starts. That is, do we know sufficiently about what is already out there, and then condemn, and then say where the lacunae are? Did you know that, for example, we have a recommendation at the level of the Council of Europe? I know not every country is concerned with that, but we started looking into the manipulative capabilities of algorithms 7 years ago. Did you know that we have a recommendation on those manipulative capabilities of algorithms that was adopted by the Committee of Ministers of the Council of Europe, 47 member states, already 5 years ago? Doesn't mean that it's going to be directly implemented at the national level, but first check your facts before you transmit information or before you utter in a way where we're going.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. So to pick up on some of Patrick's points, I would like to hand to Perry. Would you like to put your question forward, Perry?
Yes, I would love to. My name is Teresa. I'm from Israel. And for the past 2 days, we heard about regulation and the importance of regulation. And I believe that we saw a certain point of view of the speakers that came from different countries. And I wanted to ask you, if you thought, if we think about the internet, it's worldwide. So if you thought maybe to make a worldwide convention in order to make specific regulations that will be on these big, huge companies, and that's in order to keep us safe.
I was going to hand this to Gorica, but I don't know if you feel, because you have a perspective from North Macedonia, but maybe you want to jump in?
Well, it's quite specific for somebody that represents a country, and then the country is the one that takes, of course, some.
You're next.
Yes.
Yeah.
So of course, I mean, our work is also to transmit to our governments what are good practices, basically, in other countries. And this is why we represent these countries in multilateral fora, and to exchange good practices and to see what's there, how we can better regulate in the World Wide Web, of course. I mean, going back to your question. So this is part of our role in inspiring possibly our governments how to make better regulation policies, and hoping that we will get there. That's what we'll have at the moment. Yeah.
Patrick, you want to come in, or?
Yeah. Well, we have one thing in common in this room. We're all screenagers, right? I don't believe so much in the Z-gen or whatever. We have all come from generations that have contributed to different developments, and you're already past, I'm sorry to say. The alpha generation is there, and the alpha generation are the current first users of social media in that context. Why do I don't necessarily believe in this generational approach, first of all. That is to say, we have seen the diversity in each of our countries. Young people in Brazil, they're not all the same. They are not all the same. They represent different political options and regimes and democratic and non-democratic values. So that is reality. Then, do we have a worldwide scheme possible? I would say no. For the simple reason that the countries in the world represent very, very diverse options of the values that we need to stand for. Yeah? So the only thing that we need to do is to ensure that all the actors engaged take up their role. That is governments, yes, but that's also the companies, that is also the parliaments, that is also the civil society, that is also all the actors that are here, with all minute, maybe, contribution. Some countries have tried, some governments have tried to regulate it. And everyone is doing it a little bit more or less haphazardly. Germany tried, as one of the first countries, to regulate it and say, you guys, if you don't take down your hate speech within 24 hours, then you will be fined. Huge fines. Did it work? No, it didn't work. So we need to be much more fine. We, for example, also at the Council of Europe this year, adopted a recommendation on no hate speech. We have a convention on cybercrime, which includes a specific protocol on racism and xenophobia, where you can go to, when it comes to criminal law offenses that are committed through the use of electronic media. So there's a number of things that exist, but indeed, we have also worked on issues like content moderation, public content prioritization. It's not only about moderation. Some countries have employed the takedown of content as one of the measures. Yeah? But there is also a question of how do we moderate, how do we prioritize content, how do we ensure that hate speech or discriminatory speech is not going to be overflowing the web. So these
Patrick,
are
I have somebody who wants to just chip in on this.
Yes.
Go ahead, Julia.
By the end of this, everybody's going to go home and be like, oh my God, that Brazilian girl wouldn't shut up. But just...
At least we will have a new image of Brazil.
I think a better one, thankfully.
Much better, yeah, very
you.
good. Yeah.
Just one question specifically to what you've been talking about, Patrick. What I've been seeing from the beginning, especially when it comes to regulations and new forms of regulating coming forward, we do see that is very Eurocentric or westernized, whatever you want to call it. How can we make this issue of disinformation, fake news, but especially of media literacy, how can we prevent it from becoming, for instance, like climate change, when we do have the perspective of the developed countries, and they point their hands at developing countries, and they're like, well, now it's your fault. If we do keep seeing that from a westernized kind of liberal democratic value, how can we approach, do you think developed countries have a responsibility to approach developing countries on the issue of media literacy?
I think you point at a very crucial issue, and that is the Eurocentric approach to things, which I plead guilty of for the past, because I joined the Council of Europe 30 years ago, over 30 years ago, where there was a hope that, let's say, the value system would really expand and be employed in all countries, at least of Europe. It has led to a certain Eurocentric approach, I believe. And that's why it is crucial when we are developing new standards, that within developing those new standards, we are currently working on the use of artificial intelligence. It is crucial that in the development of those new standards, from day one, we very often say, from the designer phase, we include the countries which are confronted with it. And I hope we have learned the lesson. I'm not sure, but I hope we have learned our lesson.
Okay, I'm going to bring the mic over here to Reem. Thank you.
Good afternoon. I'm Reem Sharha. I'm from Palestine. I'm actually a diplomat as well. My question is, actually, I'll start with answering your question about what society do we want to live in, and I'm going to answer my question. My answer that will lead to my question, and my answer is, I want to live in a society where I have the right to practice my freedom of speech. Mm-hmm. And this leads to my question regarding the censorship and exemption of not only Palestinians, but also other groups in the world where their news is not there. We have censorship of what we share. Journalists are not practicing their job. They're not protected. Unfortunately, for the latest incident of the murder of Shireen Abu Akleh, a very outstanding journalist on her job. And with this, my question comes on with the young people. How could we build the trust and find a balance where we can be actively engaged and be involved in the system and be part of this new generation of technology and new future of having media transformed into social media platforms instead of just reading it on a paper? What is the balance for Palestinians and other societies that face the same oppression and censorship, and how could we actually express our right for freedom of speech?
Teresa, can I hand that to you? Thank you, Reem.
What a question, because this is a question that we daily face in our work in my institution. Of course, how can we really implement media freedom? How can we really convince the states how important is media freedom? And this is a question of political will. If the political will is not there, of course, no one can do it to in a way replace this lack of political will. So this is the first thing. And let me. I think it's one important thing. Democracy, it's not a natural state. It's a result, it's an outcome of a political will. It's not something that is given, but it's not, I see young people don't, this was something that I get from there, don't take it for granted, media freedom. It's much more than that. It's not just a question of take it for granted. You have to fight for it, definitely. Democracy is not a natural state. It's an outcome of political will. And if you don't have democracy, of course you don't have media freedom. So there is, you cannot just look at media freedom and think this is, if I take care of it, I will solve the other problems. No, everything is interlinked, and if you don't have rule of law, if you don't have journalists that are protected, then simply democracy is not there. So it's not, you cannot take one element and say, if I have it, it's done. It's not. It's not. It's really a set of instruments, of tools, and you have to fight for that. The issue is how to. It's, that's the problem. Lots, you know, and the problem is my institution, we just celebrated the 25th anniversary. It was in 1997 that the mandate was adopted. And the situation is now worse than it was then. It's terrible, but this is what it is. And I'm not just saying it, I'm saying it based in clear statistics, and it's much worse. Either the situation of media freedom, either the situation of democracy, globally speaking. So all the advancements, all we had in the last 30 years, they just disappeared. So the world is not in a better shape than it was 25 years ago. So we need to continue again. It's a little bit what Patrick was mentioning. What kind of world do we want? And we have to fight for it, definitely. No one can do it for us.
Reem, did you want to respond? It's your call.
Thank you, but I just want to highlight something. It's not censorship because of government not being democratic. It's more of a censorship of the whole platform of social media and use. So it's not us deciding to choose to censor what we can share. It's mainly that we are forced to be quiet. But we will always be there and be speaking out. So thank you.
Thank you, Reem. I'm going to move conversation on a bit to education, and this is Anas. And I know there are people here who have questions. If you want to say something, and I will be scanning the room, try and catch my eye. I'm happy to try and bring people in.
Janette, can we also put forward some questions?
Well, it did cross my mind that you might have questions.
I would like.
Okay, can I let Anas ask his question, and then it's your turn?
India.
Thank you. So I am Anas from Morocco. I work as executive director of a think tank, a national one, an NGO that works with young people all over Morocco. I share perfectly Patrick's point of view about our diversity and that there is no one-size model of media or information that can fit every nation and every country. And in order to share inputs of our work as young people, especially the ones who are working in the field, I actually work with young people all over Morocco, and we did a tour, a participatory tour, so that we can discover and try to understand why young people have this. They are always critical about every and each content in all kind of media productions. For instance, in the web or in social media or even the TV and radio, young people, most of them, I'm not generalizing, but most of them are really very critical about the content. And we were asking, what do you want? So what type of content do you want? What kind of skills do you want? And so on. And we discovered that it is all question about trust. They don't trust government officials and policies. They don't trust national broadcasters. They think that they don't respond to their aspiration and they don't really speak their voice, and they don't even trust the tech and social media because they think that there is a hidden agenda, capitalistic one that is only doing business. So it was really difficult to tackle this issue, and it is complicated actually. So my question is, how can we educate and make people aware of the power of media, especially when we talk about children? Because we were talking about apps and apps that can really deal with the problem of security and so on. But what about education? Does our education system include cybersecurity programs, curriculum activities that make people aware of digital content production and so on? So this is my question. Thank you.
Thank you. Natasha, can I start with you?
Yeah, definitely. Thank you very much for this very pertinent question. And it brings us back to why we are here today. Because we've heard comments about regulation, about the role of government. And what I was really struck earlier by what Tony San said, right? The internet was almost there to get rid of the government, but now all of a sudden we are coming in when, oh, there's need for regulation, and we realize that it is very difficult for various reasons. And also because then the freedom of expression is going to be maybe put into question or jeopardized. So you have put your finger really on the spot, and what Teresa said before, it's all about media literacy. We really need to invest in education. And it brings me back to why I wanted my government to organize this conference, because this is what we are doing. We are learning from each other. We are trying to multiply what the experiences are. And it boils down to education. And this is where governments need to come in as well, not to regulate, not to silence us, but to also include media literacy in the curricula. This is in my other hat at the UN. This is also what I'm working on with Malta, to include literacy and ethical behavior from the very beginning of childhood till university level, because as far as it can sound very simplistic as an answer, but education remains the best tool we have at hand. And then how the influencers, for example, then we can choose ourselves which influencers we want to follow and which ones we do not want to follow, if we have the right tools, right, to make the best choice.
If I just may add,
please do.
Education is key, and I think, yeah, you stressed it very importantly, but it needs to be a combined effort. Yes, governments from the one point of view as a top-down approach, but definitely as a bottom-up approach as well, coming from you, from the civil society organizations, from youth, because you actually, through your work, have the tools. And we've seen it with the very good examples yesterday that were presented by these two British organizations, the Guardian Foundation. I mean, marvelous job done there. I would definitely ask how we can replicate it. You know, it's very important and it's very key.
So while I promise to hand the questions to you, I'm going to break my promise. Because, Zina, you have an idea that actually has an education element to it, but it's getting the platforms involved in that education.
Correct. Hi, everybody. I'm Zina, and I'm also from Israel. And my question has to do with the fact that because information can spread so quickly, and it's often not always true. When it comes to, we saw this during coronavirus where things were being, spread constantly, misinformation. We see this all the time when it comes to, the way that minority groups are being portrayed or the way that, conflicts are being reported sometimes. And so while it's important not to censor people, there is a way that, we saw this with coronavirus, that when people talked about coronavirus on any of these platforms, immediately it triggered, whether it was on Google or on Twitter, information about directing people to where they can get credited resources and real information from, the World Health Organization about coronavirus, which means you're not censoring anyone from saying anything incorrect. You're just telling them where they can get the correct information from. And then when it comes to hate speech about minority groups, immediately, if we're directing them towards anti-racism information, it completely discredits what someone who's spreading fake information about minority groups or what someone's, spreading information about a foreign conflict that's going on. If they're being given real information about it, not only does it detract from, what someone is propagating, but people can actually, go somewhere where they can actually read about the information from credible resources. So what can policymakers like yourselves do to pressure social media companies to actually take that type of action where they're not, censoring people, but they're doing what they're supposed to do responsibly?
Thank you. Who would like to take it? Patrick?
I can say something about it, and thank you for giving the positive examples, because in fact, that's already quite a number of tech companies that are internet intermediaries do that kind of job. And the difficulty very often is that certain information needs to be put in a certain context. Hate speech, for example, the reason why it is very difficult to take down hate speech through artificial intelligence is that it needs to be put in a certain context. I've done workshops with Facebook, for example, where I needed to decide whether a certain information was hate speech or not. And I can tell you it's not always so self-evident. Yes, yes, of course, please.
Oh, sorry, can you hand the mic back? I'm so sorry.
Yeah. Sorry. So then just to follow up on that, and I was speaking about this with some of the people in this conference earlier. You know, I come from the Jewish community, and the way that we experience anti-Semitism is different than the way someone from the Black community experiences racism. So why wouldn't companies like these be obligated to bring someone who's an expert in that form of oppression to decide what that hate speech is? I'm not an expert on any sort of racism. I'm not an expert on homophobia or any of that. So why would I be the one to dictate whether something gets taken down or not? Each oppression has a very different form of experience. So why wouldn't these companies then want to bring in an expert in that field? Because racism in general, hate speech in general, we all experience it in different ways. And so it needs to be addressed in that way.
Exactly. And that's what they're trying to do as well. That's what they're trying to do. That is that there are a number of, because you can understand that, I'm not trying to defend companies here, but we have a partnership with companies. That basically is that this is the type of question we try to bring into that partnership. And they, based on their own ethical and community values, which are decided by themselves, not by anyone outside, they will try, and they have an interest in promoting, first of all, to abide by the law in the country that they are based in or that they transmit information in, and secondly, also to be sure that the information that they provide to the community that they're addressing is correct and is perceived like that also within the community. So you need a diversity in language, diversity in culture, diversity in religion, diversity in historical background, and that can lead to difficulties. We have seen that in Myanmar, for example, where the Islamic community was persecuted by the regime, and that led to murder, mass murder. So yes, indeed, we need to be able to push the internet intermediaries into that direction, and they also see that they have their own interest in doing that, because they do not want to get into trouble with the law on the first, and secondly, their ability or their consumers and their interest to use those social media are based on the trust that people place in them.
Thank you. It would be terrible if I didn't ask somebody who's from Malta to ask a question, as you are the country hosting us. Please.
Hi, I'm Janica. First of all, thank you for coming here. We've mentioned education not just one time, and we've all agreed the importance of education, and we have spoken the importance of education to the young people as well. But I think we are forgetting the most important factor, that we, this general public, look up to politicians, right? And some politicians' comment can be inflated on social media and create a much larger divide than they would have never ever imagined. And I've seen, Patrick, that you've spoken on the politicians' abuse of libel causes to try to silence journalists, and you've spoken about this a couple of years before Daphne Caruana Galizia has been assassinated. So what educations are the people of power getting in reducing these harmful effects of hate speech, because there's just one seed that grows and grows and grows, and if you don't get it at the very beginning, it might be,
Teresa?
It's much broader than education. It's much broader than education, but of course education plays a role. And I would like also to comment a little bit more regarding education, Because, you know, the problem is not just media literacy, it's much more than that. It's, you know, it's, we used to say in many countries of Europe at least that we have now the best, the generation that is best prepared to most qualified, the best prepared. Is it? I'm not sure. I'm not sure. Why? Because maybe we have today, we forgot some important dimensions that we used to, or we had in the past, and we need now more than ever. Humanities, for example. And this is a problem. So this is a problem. We have maybe much better, well-prepared engineers, etc., but we don't have this dimension. And this dimension is really a problem because it makes us very vulnerable, very, very vulnerable to really understand the mechanisms, to really understand the values, to really understand what, again, what kind, in which society do we want to live. And this problem is a problem of education, definitely. Regarding, and this is why we have so many politicians now using their power and using the power they have and the space they occupy in the public sphere to do what? First of all, saying that I do not want to use the media because the media scrutinize them. So the first enemies are the media, the second enemies are institutions, because this is the intermediation, those that explain, those that in a way makes, put a layer between the consumers or the citizens, I would prefer to say the citizens, and in this case, the politicians. And if you look at all all these new populisms, the first targets are always institutions and media, and journalists, of course. But these are the first targets. So let's remove this, and let me talk directly to the people, pretending that you know, I'm part of these people against corrupt elites. And this is very dangerous. And this is a problem of education, but it's a problem of education that it's not looking at this important dimension that is human dimension.
Only with the mic.
So my question were what you guys that are kind of our hope, you know, what are you guys doing to help us in this?
Yes,
because because the politicians are still inciting hate, and we've seen recently where a politician tried to regulate journalists. You know, what are you? I've mentioned Patrick before because you've spoken about this. You've spoken about the abuse that politicians exercise, and well, Daphne Caruana Galizia died with 46 libel cases, and that speaks volumes, you know.
Okay. Well, just to let you know, I have somebody wanting to contribute over here, and have Kurt here. Just on a, I mean, if we're all happy, unless you tell me otherwise, we can keep going. I'm aware of the time, Patrick.
No, on the 10th of October, 5 years ago, we started within the Council of Europe a study on a mission to inform. The first person to be interviewed, because it was an in-depth interview with 20 investigative journalists, but done by a Maltese researcher, Marilyn Clark. The first person to be interviewed was Daphne Caruana Galizia, and we produced her interview separately from the study, and has led to where we are now. And I think where we have, and we're working right now on what is so-called the SLAPs, the strategic lawsuits against public participation, which become a huge problem. Not only in Malta, you've heard about it yesterday, but certainly also in quite a number of other countries. Whereas the European Court of Human Rights says, when you are in a powerful position, you should be more open to criticism. You should be more open to the voice and of the watchdogs that are out there. I don't like to call journalists watchdogs, but they have to bring the powerful to account. That is a role that they are playing, bringing the powerful to account. And then, of course, when it then comes to a justice issue, then it has to go to the courts. So that is the basic value. But on the education, I think the key thing is that our education system, in the best case, is prepared for the 20th century. In the worst case, it's preparing us for the 19th century. When I went as an exchange student to the United States 30 years ago, one of the key things for high school education was to learn how to drive a car. In Europe, that was unseen, unheard of. So it's not only about adding a subject matter of how can we now bring young people to the digital age. We have to start with digital citizenship, and that is the concept we try to promote. We are preparing people to live in the 21st century, not in the 20th century or not in the 19th century. And that is to which extent are our education systems preparing us for that? They're not, because our education systems in large quantities, in large geographical areas in Europe are still preparing us for the past.
Let's have another conference about education, just education. Over here. Hi, nice to meet you. Please introduce yourself. You can, if you stand up, then everyone can see you.
Hello,
Could you stand up for me?
Yes, yes.
Stand up. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. My name is Sukaina. I am a multimedia journalist from Morocco. First of all, thank you for the panel. And my question is, through these 2 days conference, we did talk about governance, data, and privacy. And as we all did follow the Cambridge Analytica scandal in 2016, the US elections, so can we still expect social media platforms to be used as a software, as a soft power, and how this can challenge democracy, whether in European countries or in third world countries?
Teresa, I'd like to start with you, and then maybe others will join.
It can, but definitely it can. But it also, let me also go back regarding, we have a responsibility also as citizens. It's not just the governments, again, and this is very important. So, and for the companies, and it's going a little bit, I think, in the direction of you, Zina. Yeah. What happened?
Oh. Maybe a balloon from yesterday's.
Yeah. Yes. Okay.
Yeah. We like to tie things up at the end.
Yeah. I see. But it's very much one issue regarding which the social media and the platforms are very, very sensitive is the business and reputation. And if they feel that you really are not happy with something, they will try to adjust. This is the reason why they came with the transparency. Look at what was happening 5 years ago. So there are important steps that were taken, but we have to do much more. And it also depends on us all. We want more. We don't want to have bias. We don't want. Yes, because gender matters, cultural specificities matters. So all this matters. What you said. So we need also to be aware of our power. And I'm not sure that we are aware that we have power, and we have to raise awareness in our groups, in our circles, and try really to mobilize to produce change. And to produce change, we have to act at different levels, definitely.
So on that note, I'm going to draw us slowly to a conclusion by, first of all, would you help me?
Yes, of course.
Asking Kurt to help me. So here are your manifestos.
Okay, thank you.
You will be sent something full of content soon. But I leave you with those. Those are, there's the washing line and the peg in there for you to remember that we were all here.
Yes.
And in particular, I would like Kurt now to ask his question, maybe in particular of Natasha.
So my name is Kurt Farrugia, I'm Maltese as well. I happen to be also a student at the University of Malta, and apart from that, I'm also involved into activism. In fact, I'm the president of MKSA, which is the leading organization within the Max faculty. I wanted to ask a question before I go to my question. Who are the people that are in here? Who are students in here? Raise your hands. Okay, quite a number. All right. So my question is this. As I said, I'm the president of MKSA, and we do deal a lot with, I work a lot with students, and also we deal a lot with students who come up with issues or maybe any problems whatsoever. However, when at the University of Malta, at the moment, we're lacking a lot, slightly on activism. At the moment, activism is a bit on the downfall. And when I ask certain students why you're not involved in activism, mainly the main thing that will come up is because we're not treated as adults, but we're treated literally as kids or children. So we are here, we're discussing, it's been a lovely 2 days. Moving forward, are we willing to open up much more discussions to students? Are we willing to have open consultations? Are we willing to have, even in the panel itself, we would have a mix of students, people from the industry as well, that's been in the profession for quite a long time, and there will be a collective discussion where everyone can express their opinion, because mind you, although we're students, we have a lot of opinions, and we shouldn't be discredited for being just students, because I've come across many comments like, 100 euros is not, because in Malta we are paid for, we're giving stipends to like us, help us in our educational system as well, and we're...
Can you pose your question? And then I'm going to ask Godfrey to answer very quickly.
We are being told like 100 euros is not enough for it, so my question is this. Moving forward, are we willing to have more conversations together with students rather than having the normal way of having just professional people on board and that's it?
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yes, you did. Why?
I encourage conversations.
You did, but...
We were in COVID.
Yes, but you're just one individual. You're just one individual, though.
Okay, here's another guy. Godfrey Baldacchino. Do you take your students out of a classroom and take them a field for... Tony Sant, if he's there, what do you do? So, okay, so you're going to be careful. Don't generalize.
I won't generalize, but can you explain to me then why we're experiencing a lot of activism in Malta, for example, from students?
Okay, Kurt, I'm going to jump in here. Because I think one of your questions that could be answered here, it's not those questions for this space, but one of your questions that could be answered here is to the people on the stage, which is to say, you've heard from Generation Z for the past 2 days. You're hearing from them now. You've been very patient. You've answered lots of their questions. I know you have questions for them. Please, some people stay around so that you can speak to them. They will hang around for you to have conversations. Approach them. Generation Z doesn't bite. You don't bite. How do you take this forward? How can you guarantee to them that this isn't just a 2-day PR event for you, that it's real, it's genuine, that you take something forward here? Where shall I start? Natasha?
I mean, Kurt, the easy way out is to say, I'm not being listened to, and you just stand in a corner. And I'm not saying it's you, because you're here with us. This conference was open to all the students of the University of Malta. Of course, the others had to be flown in. They're not here. So we gave the platform. I'm not saying that we're doing everything right. The platform is there. Are they here? They're not. Am I judging them? I am not. I think Teresa made a very good point. Each and everyone has the power. I mean, if we arrived where we arrived, honestly, it wasn't just by sitting pretty. You have to fight. You have to fight, you know, to make yourself heard, to make yourself... And okay, we're two Maltese here. I'm not saying my country is perfect, okay? I'm the first one to say it. I'm
you
the
can
first
talk
one
about
to
that
say
in the bar later.
But, you know, let's not take the easy way out as well. You have to stand up for your rights. And if any of your lecturers is not listening to you, use social media and call them out. Name and shame, you know? Let's do it. Because we have the power. The power is there, right?
Thank you.
And I am the one, you know, encouraging you to do it.
And this is the ambassador to
right.
the OSCE.
I mean...
So the Maltese ambassador is defending you in the international organizations. Well, first of all, I don't know what is the participation in elections of the 18-25-year-old in Malta. I don't know. I didn't look up the figure.
The 16-year-olds have voting rights in Malta.
That's excellent.
So on paper, we are trying to... I don't know how many of them went out, but they have voting rights.
Does anyone know? Does somebody know? 95%.
That's excellent.
Wow.
I'm 95%.
Wow.
I think...
And it's not compulsory.
It's not compulsory. Don't go to prison if you don't.
I think quite...
Wow.
No fine. That's why I'm making that comment. Yes, it's a very high voting turnout, and there's no fine. It's not compulsory. There's nothing. People, no, it's whatever. It's what it is. Take it in the cultural context that you need to take it and to put it.
China.
There's always a cultural context.
Sorry, Patrick, continue.
That's fantastic. I can only congratulate you on that. Yes. I mean, not one other country in Europe has such a high participation rate of young people.
I'm really
but
sorry.
in the Council of Europe, what we have done is institutionalize the participation of youth. We have a very important youth sector. And it's not only a question about participation, but what we introduced already 40 years ago is a co-management principle. And that co-management is between government and representatives of youth organizations to decide together on the priorities. And that's an amazing feature, I think. And that means that in all policy areas, that youth sector, which is commonly managed by young people themselves and governments, have a voice in the development of the policies of the organization. And that is quite substantive, I think.
Okay. Teresa, would you like to, as part of your closing remarks, would you like to, when will you next speak to somebody under the age of 30?
No, again, let me go back to the issue of power, to the issue of the sharing, the responsibility, this sharing of responsibilities, sorry. And there is one question that I would like very much to put forward, and for you, young people. What do you think? Are you better prepared than our generation, and mine is an old one, to face the challenges of social media, or we are less vulnerable, or we are more vulnerable than you? Because this is something that is really an important question. So, because, tell me, I would like to know.
Anyone want to jump in on that? Yes? Ah, you need a mic. You can't, it's like a conch, it's like my new conch.
Thank you for this question. I think, as far as I am concerned, that you are less vulnerable than us.
Less?
Because
this is very
less, because
I would
maybe
say that we are much more vulnerable.
No, sorry, because maybe we are very equipped with like all digital tools and skills necessary to become even influencer on social media, but it is question of value. I think that there is a crisis of value among young people. I'm speaking from a personal perspective that make them not really aware of the power of social media and make them like just throw in content so that they can get more likes and become very famous. And they are really distancing from the social and real life. So, for instance, if we are in an event, maybe if from your generation people will go further for discussion, dialogue, and so on, but maybe most of us will go for like to get only digital contacts and so on, and to keep in touch in social media, and so what other are doing. So that's like this is the point, is that you are equipped with values and real life, and we are equipped with the skills and the technical. So this is my point of view.
This is very interesting. Very good. Very good. Yeah. Now that's the reason why we have to discuss together.
There's someone else who would like to speak to this.
Hello, I'm David from Israel. Thank you for providing our platform, and thank you for giving me an opportunity to speak. I've heard all of these beautiful speakers that talked about like everything and answered all my questions, but I wanted to say that we all have responsibility. When I post, I have responsibility for my audience as a content creator. The platform that I post on has the responsibility. And my question is how we allocate the responsibility between us. And I think we don't need to throw balls. You are more responsible, or I am more responsible. I think we should work together. Because, for example, as a Jewish person, I receive a lot of anti-Semitic comments on my Twitter, on Instagram, on TikTok. And I think it's not only my responsibility how I respond, it's also the platform's responsibility to respond to that, as we already discussed before. But I think it's not right to overthrow the responsibility only to your side and like to say the government, you should deal with it, the platform, you should deal with it. We also, the content creators, should take their responsibility. And maybe, I think, I might made certain mistakes on social media, maybe like 10 years ago I made fun of someone. So they can be like hurt by my words, what I posted, or maybe someone hurt me. And I think we all should take the responsibility and be held accountable for the words that we use and the sources that we provide and the tweets we tweet, because it's too much easy for us to press on the button and send a tweet. And we should take full responsibility in what we do.
Yeah, thank you, David.
If I may, Janet, I think it would be good for all of us to have a look at the No Hate Speech campaign of the Council of Europe, because the No Hate Speech campaign of the Council of Europe is with and for young people primarily on how to act, and it gives them very concrete tools on how to do that and become an actor, become aware of what your acts are in the digital world.
Thank you, Patrick. Michael.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Michael and I'm from Malta. I just have a small question. Coming from a society which has been mentioned, we have high voting turnouts. Obviously, we need to put political context. It's quite a political, polarized society, which obviously does have its effects on media and information. What do you think us youths can do to combat this issue of disinformation and the repercussions that political polarization has on society? Thank you.
It's a small question.
Yeah, if you could just keep it to a
very easy one.
We'll send you an email about it.
2 lines and it's done. 2 lines and
how long?
We'll buy you a drink after.
How long? He says he has as long as it takes. Who would like to jump in first? Patrick, you look ready.
No,
okay.
I think our societies, and especially when you live in a bipolar system. I don't know the Maltese governmental system well enough, but if you live in a bipolar system, the social, and there is quite a bit of research on filter bubbles and on filter bubbles in which you live, and where the information that you get is actually geared towards your personal political convictions, and the high participation rate in Malta of younger people in the elections may have to do with that. I see that polarization is enhanced and stimulated by the social media through the existing algorithms. It has been the case in the United States, been the case in Brazil, and it may also be the case in Malta.
Everywhere.
Of course, I mean, it's everywhere, as Teresa says, but in a bipolar system, this becomes extremely important. And I think it is important to understand the algorithmic system that is behind you reading certain informations and news, and look at the systems that are there to be able to go beyond and take the courage to go beyond the already existing, that's a filter bubble that you have in your own mind. Let's face it as well. And then sometimes, that's why I also said, I don't believe in a generation. The generations usually reproduce the systems that are there before. Israel, Palestine, Russia, Ukraine, name it. I'm not going to give any more specific examples, but that polarization is there. And as young people, can we go beyond that polarization? Can we ourselves detach ourselves? Because ultimately, I'm sorry to come back to the Maltese situation, because ultimately it is not about left or right. It is about a small country in Europe. Yesterday someone said the smallest country in Europe. To what is the image that this smallest country is portraying, and how long will you carry it if you don't look beyond the immediate political power games that are ongoing. It is about how are we as a country, as Maltese, seen in this world. And I think that is something that you will need to answer yourself, and to which extent can you go beyond this polarization.
I'm going to ask Natasha to say a little bit about that, and then Julia, who's so patient. You were such a credit to your nation, being so patient. Natasha.
Yeah, no, thank you, Michael, for that question. And of course, I don't know how many of you in here are aware of our system, but we have this unfortunate system, right, that the political parties own their media stations, their newspapers, etc. On the other hand, now, if we want to be a bit positive, we know the bias. We know exactly what to expect from this station. We know exactly what to expect from this station. The good thing is there is independent media around as well, so we have to fish around. We should be intelligent enough to say, okay, I know the bias, I know this bias, I know this other bias, and I will make my educated analysis, I will draw it in the end. Is there any media without a bias? There isn't at the end of the day. So let's say, just maybe to end on a positive note, that in our case, it's very clear. There's no hidden agenda there. But
transparency.
But it's true, of course. You are hammered, and that's what it is. And it is adding more to the polarization that then we need another conference, and maybe Maria will join us as well to discuss about the culture of this country, you know, so it adds to that.
Gorica?
If I just may come in, coming from another small country where, you know, polarization is a very common thing, I think that, you know, actually youth has this sort of intrinsic possibility to recognize manipulation and to fight it. And I think that actually social media is your soft power that you could use for this good cause, basically, because it's transboundary. Youth sees that there are common denominators, right? And so maybe this could be further exploited, and this is why it's important for us as institutions and as countries to bring in more the voice of youth on the table rather than being discussed about, you know. So yes, I think you know, going down the positive notes.
Julia, you've been so patient. Okay.
It's just another, not to disprove you, but just an answer to what Ms. Ribeiro said. If nothing else, the election in Brazil did bring really good data on engagement in social media, engagement in fake news. And what we have of actual hard research is the biggest engagement in fake news comes from WhatsApp and then Facebook, and older than 35 and older, but especially 50 and older. And mostly educated white people in Brazil are the ones spreading misinformation from 35 and older. And the biggest platform for that was WhatsApp, which was something that was kind of overlooked during the day here because there's no algorithm, it's people to people. But that's it, that's hard data that we got from the election. So yes, I wouldn't say that you don't have the values, it's just a question of literacy, of how much you know, how quick things change generation by generation. And it does bring the question of apathy. Maybe younger people don't engage with fake media because they don't engage with any media.
No, but yeah, because this is also, sorry.
No, please, please respond.
Yeah, because this is an issue. Do young people read the media, or they are completely dependent only on free information, low quality information that is on social media? That's the issue, not for an older generation, but for young people. And then yes, the problem is much bigger one, because what the algorithms did is that you know, when we had this wonderful utopia that we heard, Anthony sent, was brilliant in explaining us this, this ideal public sphere, very much inspired by Habermas. It was the web. This was the internet as we see it in the beginning. What is it now? It's not a decentralized where there is no control, but on the contrary, what we have, it's a centralized network. What is happening in this centralized? We are producing, reinforcing, and spreading political and ideological narratives. And that's it. And creating the bubbles, creating the echo chambers. So that's the big problem. So because the younger generation, they don't look at legacy media. They don't like TV, or they are used to they have another habits, consumption habits. And this also creates a big gap between generations. And this is another problem for the next conference, Natasha.
Great. Okay, yeah. I look forward to
with
being
all
at the next
problems
conference.
of social cohesion, but...
Okay,
yeah.
I look forward to holding you to account at the next conference.
Yeah.
Okay, will you please join me in giving our panel a huge thank you so much. Huge round of applause. Thank you so much. Yes, and now give yourselves a big round of applause. Okay. I am going to play a very short video just so that we can move a few chairs around to give Alex some space. Alex has obviously been the chair, but oh, no, please stay. No, that wasn't people and chairs. If you two could just move back a little bit. If we could play the short video, that would be great.
Should I stand to the side? I don't want to mask anybody or anything like that. This is going to be very short, guys. I don't want to throw it over your specs either. First thing I'm going to do is something that I want to do because I'm going to forget otherwise, okay? I want to thank my team. this didn't happen by accident, okay? So it went from this lady whose fault it is that my sabbatical was spent like this instead of learning how to tango in Argentina, okay? Okay. I want to thank Chris, who suffered me for the last couple of weeks and months or whatever it is. I want to thank Janette. I want to thank Ian. I want to thank Alex. I want to thank Mario. I want to thank Gabriela and the team there. And I want to thank Luke for your patience in very stressful times. This was done very quickly, just in case you don't know, okay? Because I remember the phone calls I was refusing to take from Elizabeth, my cousin, just in case you don't know. We don't look at her. She's prettier than I am. And Elizabeth, sorry, Elizabeth, I'm bound to forget somebody. Of course, I would forget family. For me, the highlight of today was the balloon going off. Because that was kind of the shock moment. Now you go, boom. Now, we attribute different shock moments in this country. So a lot of it, you kept on referring to it, it was the agenda behind, the ghost behind the agenda was Daphne getting blown up. I know exactly where I was when Daphne got blown out. I had just finished teaching. I know exactly who I called. Maria walked into my office, I think, I'm sure. You had. You were lecturing, you came to my office, and it wasn't even her who blew, and they blew her up, which became the narrative, is when they get my brother did the play and the rest of it. There's another narrative which is important. I was hoping I wouldn't have to say it, but I need to say it now. I'm not one of those proud Maltese guys. I really am not. I'm a citizen of the world. I spent all of my time traveling, and I intend to go back to traveling. This conference is not some made-up kind of political kind of thing, okay? So when Natasha came to me, nobody's interfered with anything I had to do in terms of who I decided to invite to speak out. So in terms of freedom of speech and whatever it is, I can promise you, as long as I'm living in this country, I'm not feeling that anybody is imposing on me what I have to say as when to do it, whichever style I want to do it. I want to make this very clear to you. I think we've discussed this. I want to make it clear to everybody, okay? Okay? This is not about needing to move on. Because people like us who travel, like me, like Godfrey, like Tony, anybody who has a Maltese passport, like young people have to travel Maltese passport, before Daphne was killed, it would be, where do you come from? Malta, Club Med, Sunshine. Yeah, by the way, that still works. That's why so many people love coming to Malta for conferences. The Sunshine, okay? After that, it became You Kill Journalists. Which after a while, for people like me, became a case of, well, let's have a conversation about it. The conversation took a long time to start, but the conversations have been ongoing. They will keep on going. I have absolutely no doubt for the next 5 years, Daphne will be part of the narrative. And a lot of us knew Daphne personally. I dined at her house. I took 2 of my students to speak to Paul, okay, in London a couple of weeks. Ian was there with me. Yeah, you remember that. But when I'm saying young people and information, it's complicated. And by the way, the whole thing about it's complicated, it's a riff, right? There was a joke on my site, right? Those of you who are old and get Facebook, and when your girlfriend busts up with you, and you're saying you're in a relationship, and and she says it's complicated, it's done. It's dead, okay? So that's where that came from. But after a while, as we started to riff between us, me and Janette and Chris, it kind of stuck. And the more I think about it, I really do think it's complicated. I started this by going back to 2019 to show you what we were doing. So those of you who were here in 2019, I showed a video which we showed in 2019. That some of the characters are no longer there. Are they there? The Trumps, the Josephs, the Bolsonaros, and whatever it is. Are they coming back or not? Who knows? It's politics. Just look at the UK, okay, for instance. I'm not going to change my mind about media, technology, and education needing to work in symbiosis to fix the problem. So I'm a bit hard-headed about that. I'm sorry. What we do at the 3CL, we do education and technology, I think, but this is an educational exercise, just in case. For Natasha, it's also a foreign policy exercise for people who are there, okay, wearing their suits and ties. This is also part of the foreign policy. I know, I remember the discussions about this. And by the way, the Daphne narrative was also part of the new foreign policy. We need to understand, tackle it, face it. It's called Brand Malta. And nobody's saying, let's just move on now. But people are saying, it's what it is, but we need media, technology, and education to try and get us to the next place. So that's why I jumped up like a kind of spring when you said, okay? Because I too blame the education system and the Victorian education systems, which I heard. Sorry, I'm asking you, okay? Okay? In this country, we still have an education system because of the polarized political system that we have, that kids are still taught, do not discuss politics. I remember being sent to the corner when I was 10, I think, because I said something about politics. I've never been sent out of the class. It was related to something in politics. So it's no surprise that by the time people get to university, there's in my country, having these kind of conversations made it really complicated, because when people like us kind of meet me, like, has this guy come out of outer space, you know? We're not used to doing that, but then probably the same thing happens to you, doesn't it? But happens to Tony, I know. Okay, and to Natalina, no doubt. And others, okay? So that's my first comment. Second thing I think is media, what do we mean by the media? And we know, we've had these conversations, and what I think the media is what you have in your pocket. That's the media for me. And for me, the media is screens. Of course, there are people who are more influential with this, okay? My arguments with my brother always was, yes, because I used to tell him, look, I can write, and if I'm in the right kind of place and time, and I'll take a picture of something, I'm being a journalist. So you're telling me I'm a journalist, you know, and he told me, I have privileged access, you don't. So the Prime Minister will listen to me, they won't listen to you. To which I said, okay, we'll see. It depends. It depends. I think it all depends. So this is all about the grey areas. That's all I can tell you. I still think we're at a stage, though, because we talked about media. We didn't talk a lot about stories and storification. That's the other thing which used to annoy me about journalists, by the way. A story. Who decides what the story is? Who decides what's important and what isn't? The journalist decides it. The citizen decides it. That doesn't happen to be there by accident. Does the politician decide it? I really love the idea of top-down. I think that you were mentioning a bottom-up. Okay? You need to operate at both levels. You can blame those who you voted for, or you can decide not to vote for them, or you can try and do something yourself. I, too, am a product of this country. I escaped when I was 23. It took me years to escape. I escaped with £1,000 in my pocket. A lot of us did. A lot of us came back to try and do something about the country. So if we get a bit prickly about these things, it's because we've got the scars. And you can also operate outside, inside system to get a little bit of change done. So that's not me preaching to you, it's just what it is. I think the idea of stories speaking to power, when we have this whole attention economy thing that everybody's trying to gain your attention, and the ones are not here in the room, you know, the platforms, because they're scraping your data. Just listen to Noah. I learned a lot today. No, there it is in black and white. That's what they're doing. It's not me, I'm not doing that. But on the other hand, all of those guys scraping your data, if there's a government with enough money, or Cambridge Analytica, it is not an excuse that I went from 15 years ago, being one of the first guys with a PhD on social media here, and I used to have all of these kids there, who then called themselves social media experts the next day, and they started consulting to governments, that a lot of the government budgets started to move to social media, because it was deemed to be influential. So stories to power, to society, to different cultures. How do you get around the attention economy? I keep on going back. Well, you need to know a bit of how the media operates. You need to be really good at technology, and all you kids are better than me at technology, you know, I guess, I hope. Unless you speak to my 93-year-old stepfather, who's on his mobility scooter, but he's got a Bluetooth speakers on it, and it's in racing red. And he'll point a middle finger to you guys if you tell him that he's irrelevant. So be careful about that, okay? The irrelevance of people. My other suggestion is this. Work in symbiosis. Work with these guys. If you think these guys have power? These guys are trying to influence power. So they're technically your mouthpieces, your voice pieces. They're here not just to listen, but to engage. Nobody came here delivering speeches to you, said, we're here to listen. And I think the next stage is the obvious one. What do you want to do with these guys? Or with the various Sean Stevens, or the various people with the networks. All those people who went out and said, oh, this place is something really interesting. So my question to you is, what do you want to do with this? Because if it's just the manifesto, we just have fun for 2 days. Great. I've aged a bit more. But we've got the pictures. We've got the video. We can do something with it. What do you want to do with it? Now, the encouraging bit is that till now, we all talk to each other, conversations, no? You and I started to have a conversation about Ghana. The Israelis are kind of saying, you could do something in Israel. The Swedes, they're here. There you are. We could do something in Sweden. Something. My suggestion to you is that if you want to do something in Ghana, in Israel, or in Sweden, it has to be led by somebody from Ghana and Israel and in Sweden. You need to have the right kind of faces, cultures, people who understand what works and what doesn't work in those countries. If you do it some other way, it will not work. So this is why here, whenever we achieve some change, subversively, yes, it had to be a Maltese person sometimes doing it, because the Maltese person would understand the culture, the society, would have all of that interdisciplinary culture, the soft skills, the liberal arts kind of things. And of course, we are suffering from the fact that all of the investment has gone into STEM and the rest of it, even though I keep on looking at Noah as the math scholar who can write, which is why I love what he does, because he can explain it, okay? So what do you want to do? That's my question to everybody. Now, the manifesto will be around. I mean, Janette has worked overnight. You can see the bags on the horizon. Are mine. So we'll put this stuff online. If we've got people's email tell you, contribute, keep on the whole blessed thing open. We have networks with other people. I'm looking at Claire. So what are we going to do with it on our radar? I don't know. We'll see what we can do. This is very used to. It has to be of use to Claire for something to happen. Like us, for something to happen. That's how human beings are. They will only go out of their comfort zone if there's something in it for them. Otherwise, they will not do it. That's how human beings are. And don't tell me that Generation Z is any different. Because I'm the father of a 20-year-old. So that's all I can tell you. What do you want to do? And the question is going to remain open for a while. I went back to 2019. We're in 2022. The problems are there. I think the opportunities are there. You have something I don't have. Youth, energy, time. That's most precious of commodities, okay?